Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's another episode of the Bank Marketing Show. I'm Dan. Welcome, Chris.
How you doing, Dan?
Doing good. Today we've got a really interesting topic that we touch on a lot on the show, and we've done a couple episodes around it, but really going to go deep on all things brand today. We've got a really great guest, someone who thinks all day long about this stuff, and hopefully change your kind of perspective on brand and why it's important to banks.
Yeah, it's one thing when you and I have conversations on the episodes, Dan, around this, but it's something different when you've got a pro on that does this all day, every day. So I agree with you. That's why I'm excited about having Erin. So, well, Erin Fults, welcome.
Thanks, Chris and Dan. Happy to be here.
Great. Love having you. So I'll give our listeners kind of a broad brush, quick one, but Erin Fults is a marketing strategist. She's a communications coach. She has worked with a number of our bank clients and works with organizations and companies across the marketplace and really message alignment. And then implementation into marketing and sales and lots of related things that will become more evident through our conversation today too, that I'm excited about. And Erin, your background in this for more than 15 years. I love that you say you've got a street MBA in this, but you do have certification certainly in StoryBrand as a StoryBrand certified guide, and they ask you answer coach and several others in your certification portfolio. So, Erin, we're super glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is a topic that I enjoy diving into. So let's dive in wherever you guys want to start.
There you go. Well, I was thinking as we were prepping for this, and again, the three of us have actually worked together on brands and bank brands and those types of things as well. So it'll be fun to share some of the experience the three of us have had. But Erin, let's kind of lay the groundwork here for what do we mean when we say brand messaging?
Yeah, so brand messaging is a way that you talk about who you are as a company. And it's not so much who you are in terms of your story, but it's what is the value you bring to the marketplace and what are the actual specific words you use to articulate that in your marketing, in your sales conversations, even in conversations with your customers. It is how you position the problem you solve in the marketplace so that it's really clear to your prospect the problem you can solve for them, the value and benefit, the whatever product or services. So in the case of this audience, the services that you offer and sell, how do they make your customers' lives better? What problem do they solve for them? And having a really clear and consistent way to talk about that in your marketing, in your sales, in your conversations.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, but specific to this audience, Erin, what are some thoughts or your thought around why this is particularly important for community financial institutions that at surface are, to the general public, well, everybody does loans and deposit products.
Right. Yeah. So the thing with financial institutions is for most people, it's clear what you sell, right? Like there's brand messaging that is really helpful for some organizations where they need the words to help the marketplace really understand what they sell. That's not so much the case with this audience when we're talking financial institutions. Just as you said, Chris, like loans, deposits, we know what you're selling. The question is how are you positioning and differentiating between the other bank down the street, the other institution down the road that you're competing against? And When it comes to it, we've been, like you said, we've done worked on several projects together and doing this work with a number of credit unions and financial institutions where it is very common for people to go, well, we're just better. Like we just have better customer service. We're more relational or like whatever the thing is. And the reality is better is subjective, right? And so it really, like, to say that I'm better than so-and-so down the street is not clear positioning, nor is it really that compelling to the person that you are trying to reach. What a brand message will do is it helps you be really clear about your positioning and how you differentiate between your competitor. What problem are you uniquely positioning to solve? Your competitor probably solves the same problem. You might solve it a little differently. You might solve it exactly the same. But the interesting thing with brand messaging is the company that communicates it publicly is the one who gets credit for solving that problem, even if your competitor solves the same problem, right? It's all about how we're cementing in the mind of the marketplace and in our prospect what category we fit in their brain in terms of the problem that we solve. And our brand message can do that really effectively if you craft a compelling brand message. And so that becomes like there's several layers of value for why this work is important. But that's one of them, is that you now have a clear way to talk about how you're different, and you're giving your people the words for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of banks, they know they're different, right, in some way.
Right.
But so the problem is not being different, or the problem is not being better than your competitor. It's the communication of that to the market, right? Like I talk to banks around this stuff. We all talk to banks around this stuff, and I hear all the time, like, well, we have local decision making, or our service is better, or you call and you get a real person. Well, every bank says that.
Yeah.
But the brand message, right, is the story of how that kind of comes to life, and you make it a lot more tangible to the person listening to that, because every consumer is hearing that from multiple banks, and when you hear the same kind of thing from multiple places, you don't know who to believe. And the brand message is that story that builds trust and builds belief in what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges in crafting a clear brand message and doing it internally as a team at a financial institution is that you're on the inside, right? It's a little like trying to read the label from the inside of the bottle. We've all kind of heard that saying before. And you are so ingrained in the work, how you do your work, the things that are different about you, that it can be hard to know how to articulate it in a way that is compelling to the people that you're trying to reach, because it's just the water you swim in, right? And so it can be hard to identify that when you're swimming in those waters. And so there's real value in going through a process with somebody that can go through it with you and help shine a light on the things that you are just not going to really pay attention to because it feels normative to you, when in reality, it's something that needs to be pulled out and put front and center, maybe in terms of how you talk about what you offer and how you offer it, so that you are reaching the people you want to reach and do business with.
Erin, you've mentioned it a couple of times and alluded to a couple of important components of it, but talk a little bit more about the process and kind of what does the process look like? So if a bank listening to us wants to step into it tomorrow, and what does that kind of look like and feel like?
Yeah, so it can look and feel like, there's several ways that you can accomplish this. The way that I take a company through it, and Chris and Dan, when we've all worked together, the ways that we handle it is we get your stakeholders, decision makers in a room, virtually or in person. And we spend some extended time together, really asking a lot of questions, helping to pull out the things needed to develop your brand message. So it looks very much like and feels very much like a conversation, but it's asking a lot of questions that's going to help us arrive at the things that need to be part of your brand story or your brand message. And you mentioned earlier, Chris, that I'm a certified story brand guide, and story brand is a framework that you can use to develop a clear brand message. So that's the one that I use. And there's 7 parts to that message. And it really follows a narrative story structure because our brains, we as humans respond to story. We actually spend about 30% of our day daydreaming, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But our brain snaps to attention when a story begins. It's why we can binge on Netflix and hours can pass by and we have just been binging, on the stories of Netflix, or sit in a theater for 2 hours, dark theater for 2 hours and never daydream once. Is because it's like stories, it's almost like they hijack our brain and that we lock in and pay attention to when a story starts. So the brand message process is actually developing a brand story for your organization. The reason I don't use the term brand story often is because people often confuse it with thinking that we're developing the story to tell the story of your brand. And that's not what a brand message is. There's a place for that and people understanding who you are as an organization and your history and all those things. But candidly, your customers don't care until they know that you can solve a problem for them.
Right. That's the mission values category and all of that, right?
Exactly.
Related.
They may look at that before they ultimately decide to do business with you, but it's not the thing that's going to capture their attention and make you memorable earlier in the process, right?
That's right. Absolutely. So we use this narrative story structure to identify some story points or elements that come together to make your cohesive brand message. We identify what is it really that your customers want as it relates to working with you? What's the problem that you are positioning to solve? Now, everybody listening, your bank, your financial institution probably solves hundreds of problems, but we need to get clear on what's the high level problem you want to be positioned to solve in the marketplace. That's the front door, if you will, that's going to get people into your institution. And then they can discover the, 900 other problems that you solve once they get into the door for kind of that initial high level problem you're positioning to solve. And then there's several other parts of the framework where you do position as we want to show empathy for the problem that your customer's dealing with. We want to show your competency to help them. Like, what's your track record? Like, we want to show those things so people know that you are actually equipped to help them solve the problem. You've done it for other people. You can do it for them.
That's authority. Yeah.
It is. The authority piece. Yes, absolutely. And then we want to develop a really clear plan or path for how they're going to do business with you. So it makes it crystal clear what they need to do and the path you're going to take them on to help them solve this problem that you're positioned to solve. Then we're going to have really clear calls to action. So it's clear what they need to do next to move forward in doing business with you. And then we want to paint a picture of success. What does their life look like if they choose to do business with you? What are the positive things that are going to come from that? And we also want to remind them that there's something at stake. There are things that could go wrong. The problem you're experiencing, you could continue to experience it. It could get worse. We're not fear mongers, but we do want to be clear that there's actually something at stake here. If you don't make a decision and if you don't choose the right organization to work with, there could be consequences to that.
And urgency too, right? Like in one of the things that bank marketers I think struggle with is, there's times in your life where you need a loan or you're trying to get approved for a house quickly because you found something you like, but most banking financial stuff is slow moving.
Yeah.
I think this helps if you've got some pain points with your current institution, you could be dealing with those for months or years, but if the brand message can kind of set that urgency, it can make it a lot more compelling to. What we're asking people to do in bank marketing is to take a bunch of time to move accounts over or start dealing with a new thing that takes up their time. And that's really hard. It's really hard to get people to change their habits. But if there's a compelling story, if there's some, compelling reasoning, it can help bring people over.
Yeah, it's really more about inviting them into a story. Kind of one of the paradigm shifts with the story brand framework is your customer is the hero of the story, and you play the position of the guide in the story that's going to help your hero win the day. And a lot of companies make the mistake of talking about, here's how great we are and all of these things. And there's a place for, we need to show our competency. We need to show our authority and that we can help them get the results they're going after. But really, we need to make them the hero of the story and paint a picture of what their life can look like if they choose to do business with us. So it's more that we're inviting them into a story than telling a story. And a really compelling brand message does that. If you think about the brands that we beloved brands that are known, you think about, they help you picture the success that you can expect to achieve. Right? They can help you picture what your life would look like if you choose this company. And so we can do that with financial institutions. It may not be quite the same level of aspiration and, whatever, depending on how we're positioning, but it still can be really powerful that people see my life can be better in this way if I choose to work with this institution.
Yeah, it's like I was thinking about brand, the power of brand. The example of like the Starbucks starts using like the red cups, in the holiday season, and it's like it's not really a story. It's not really a story brand thing, but it's like it's a little piece of like you could be just a little bit cozier, right? If you come to Starbucks right now versus like just saying we have coffee, and I think a lot of banks do that kind of we have coffee kind of thing. But what we're talking about here is like, what's your unique story that nobody else can tell that makes that customer the hero, brings them in and kind of inextricably ties the customer to that bank.
Yeah, that's right.
Erin, it's also, you mentioned differentiating, several times, and it's probably, and correct me if I'm off track, but I think it's differentiating and specializing. And that's oftentimes what can create that synergy that if I'm a farmer and you're an ag bank, okay, got it. There's an association there, or I'm opening a coffee shop and you kind of either specialize in or really good at small business loans or what, we could go on, or, got married and buying a first home. Yeah. Oh, you do mortgages that really cater to first-time home buyers. And again, all of these are creating visuals and stories like you're talking about as well. So is that, for our listeners, do you feel like that's the track of figuring out the thing or the things? Is that, again, kind of the beginnings of the implementation of the process as we kind of have that messaging? What does that differentiation look like? And then kind of the beginning thoughts of the implementation of it?
Yeah, so I think you're right on that. A clear brand message, there is going to be some differentiation there, right? That's going to help you stand out in the mind of your prospect and the people that you're trying to reach. Like I think of, it was one of the organizations that we worked on together, and they, like many community banks, they offer a lot of services, right, to their customer. But what they were really good at is helping folks, first-time home buyers often, be able to get a mortgage loan and it be affordable, and then be able to access, the finances that they need to buy that first house. And they really became well known for that, but their marketing was not communicating that very clearly. And so when we helped them develop that clear messaging around that, it gave a clearer entry point into working with that institution and really positioned them locally in an area where they had some pretty fierce competitors that were big, like household name competitors in the mortgage space, that said, no, we can still position differently, even though that huge household name is literally down the street from us. And so to be able to do that, and then that's your overall brand message, high level, And then the secondary layers of that is you can create specific messaging for each of your product service lines as well. It still fits within the overall umbrella of your brand message, which is the work that we always do first with usually do first with an organization. And then when we get into implementation, when we get into specific campaigns or specific service areas that we want to grow, then we can go through a very similar process with more specificity around that particular product service line to develop clearer and more like on the nose messaging with that service line. And so we start high level, initially do implementation there. And that often looks like, what are the words on your website? Are they clear, in communicating? What are the major ways that you're showing up locally in your marketplace where we need to adjust that messaging to align with your new brand message? So, are you running a lot of ads locally? Do you have a billboard? Do you have what are the things that physically, because, in this industry, we're talking about folks that are in physical communities. How do we make sure all of the touch points initially for your institution are reflecting this positioning, differentiation, and clear brand message? And that's, the starting point for implementation.
Yeah, those are great points. Obviously, social is a phenomenal marketing platform to, over time, consistently convey, messaging that is your story, that is unique, that is those things, and series of digital ads and all kinds of things, all the way to the traditional media and the big brand stuff that you talk about. So
yeah. One of the things that's interesting when you think about implementation, so your brand message functionally can take a few different forms, but the kind of core first form that it takes is these 7 key messaging points that you can use, and you can use it for social, you can use it for emails, you can use it for all of the other places where in formats that our marketing collateral takes. But you can almost think about it like the 7 messaging points that get identified are almost like the notes of music. And you can take them and mix them in thousands of different ways. So you have consistency of message because you're using the same notes, but the format that it takes is different depending on the context. So for social, you might pull out 2 of your key brand message points for a social media post. You don't pull all 7 at the same time. Or you might focus on one of the messaging points in a different context or a different social post or email or ad or so forth. And it just gives you this foundational messaging to pull from. So anytime you're creating marketing collateral, you're not starting from a blank page. You're starting from, here's the core message that we're communicating. How do we take the elements of that core message in the context for whatever we're creating, social, ads, etc., and how do we make sure it reflects and communicates that message in a way that's appropriate for that context? And that's when you start to have this compounding effect where that every touch point that people have with your brand is consistent. And it's not just in the words that are going on social and websites and marketing collateral. It's also the words that are coming out of your people's mouths, the people that work in your organization. That's actually one of the biggest benefits is the alignment that happens internally with the team and an organization when they go through this process, because they have words that they're going to use consistently as a team. So everybody's talking about what you do and the problems you solve in a consistent way. The compounding effect of that is significant over time.
Yeah, Erin, you and I saw that in particular. It was a couple years back, but one of our banks that we were working on that I guess it was extremely surprising to them, but they were like, oh my gosh, the board loves this. Our frontline tellers love this. It gets us on the same page of conversation and all of those things. And it created excitement, and kind of some blood flow in that area that maybe they hadn't had. And they also commented that it made everybody involved in the entire bank kind of rowing in the same direction for the first time in a long time for that bank in particular. So certainly there's scalability there that it's going to at least improve it, if not dramatically change it. So great point.
No, I think too, to expand on that, it's like one of the reasons you kind of need somebody external to do this stuff is because you're, like I said, looking at the label from the inside, like it's really hard to do that, but somebody external can come and develop all that, and then through the development process, you're gaining and everybody that's involved in that development process is agreeing on it, and then the team kind of comes out strong. It's like the coach. And I think that's an important part of that alignment is just you're gaining that agreement as you go. Everybody comes out aligned. Everybody comes out excited and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Erin, do you think there's really significant opportunity here? Because again, we're talking about the banking industry, going with the assumption for the moment that it's a crowded vertical. Consumers, business folks, all of the above have lots of different banking opportunities out there, right? So in that, but community banks in particular, we actually talked about it before we started the episode a little bit, are very much in need of reaching younger audiences and not having aging out customer bases and doing that. So, in all of those things, but in a pretty competitive environment with community banks, if lots of them are kind of at this and are not really great, and Dan, how many times have we said, our tagline is since 1913, and we're going, what? Yeah. Erin earlier used the word compelling. That's not compelling. That's not a reason that my wife and I are going to move our banking over to you, or that my marketing agency is going to move its business over to you.
In fact, it could work against you, because a younger audience probably looks at that and says, "Well, that's an old stodgy bank. Like I want to go with a new internet bank. Like that gets me."
Yeah, but with so much of the industry, Erin, that's kind of running at the same pace. Don't you think there's just tremendous opportunity here to get a leg up when so many of your kind of same as competitors are not doing it? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Chris. And there are industries that tend to be lagging industries. Community banking is one that is playing catch up massively with the online bank. And, that's no secret, right? And so there are real challenges that community banks are up against to compete against the convenience of online and to reach younger markets and to build a clientele of a younger generation for your own survival is critical. And so the banks that are going to take the time to do this work, to develop a clear brand message, are absolutely going to have a leg up. Now, the reality is your messaging does not fix any issues in your service offering, right? I mean, let's just say that. It's not going to fix the fact that you don't have online options or whatever the thing is that, so that's a different problem that has to be solved for within, community banks. However, there are benefits, regardless of your service offering. There are benefits to what you offer that you can, if communicated clearly, can position you even directly against some of these online options where we're not trying to compete in the same category of the problem we're solving, but instead we are competing in a completely different category. And we're actually solving a problem that is happening with the online banks, just as a for instance. And so to go through the exercise, a messaging exercise to develop a clear message, it gives you, rarely do companies take the time to do this. I wish more companies did. And you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you don't take the time to go through this and do this work, because it's something that can actually be done pretty quickly in an industry where things change, very slowly. This is actually something that can be accomplished in a matter of a month. Like we can have serious traction that can happen and move you forward, and nothing needs to change other than the words you're using, which is the easiest thing to change, really, in an organization, in your marketing and so forth. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but if you can't tell, I get really excited about this because I just see so much opportunity that is wasted where people go, yeah, but we need to do this, or we need to do this. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe so, but like, we can actually make some serious progress if we can get everybody in the room, and let's be clear about how we talk about what we do offer, so it actually does connect with your ideal audience of folks. So
I was going to say, like, on the ideal audience point, I think a lot of banks struggle with, well, we want everybody. We do everything for everybody.
Yeah.
But, in today's world, like, everybody for everybody, everything for everybody marketing doesn't work. There's too many ads out there. Like, that worked, when the idea of brand was new a couple decades ago. But like today, you need to be kind of everything for one, for one segment or a couple segments. And it's not to say you're pushing, you're turning people away at the door, but you want to craft a compelling brand story for a few segments that you uniquely help well. So we were talking about like the bank example of like they kind of sort of specialize in first-time home buyers. Well, they also want to get new checking accounts. They also want all these other things, and we develop a story for, hey, the first-time home buyer that's out there struggling and, hard time qualifying for the amount of house they need, we can help. Well, that's an endearing story for other groups as well. Or that story, you're talking about like the 7 elements, like you can break that down to speak to other groups as well and bring everybody in, but it's a unifying thing. And it just is, I don't know, is more compelling, is more endearing. And like you said earlier, draws people into the story.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're that's what leads to a lot of the banking industry, generic language.
Yeah. A great brand both attracts and repels. And we don't like the repels part because we feel like we're losing a piece of the pie if we are saying no or not, let's be all inclusive and all encompassing. But in reality, if you're trying to attract everybody, you're going to attract nobody, is what you're saying, Dan, which is right on. And it's like, it gets so generic and watered down that people are like, I have no idea what makes them any different than the guy down the street. Instead of being known as the place to go if you're a first-time home buyer and you need to get a loan, I know exactly who to call for that in town.
Yeah, I've had so many banks say something to the effect of like, well, who do you, if you just ask them the question, like, who do you help uniquely well? And the general response is like, well, we want to craft a, personal financial solution for every customer.
The community,
yeah. We're crafting the right financial solution for the community. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
And so it's like, in your mind, when you're saying that, as the banker is saying that, I know that there's a few things going on in their mind when they're coming up with that. But it's that like, well, we help this group do this, and we help this group do this, and we help this group do this. So generally, what's the blanket statement? Well, it's going to be some generic thing. But instead, you want a story that weaves together those 3 or 4 different groups that you help well, and speak directly to them, get on channels that they're on, talk about problems that they have. Like nobody goes out and saying, I need to get a loan today, right? But it's I need a car to get to work. I need a house to raise my family in. And that's what you're helping them with, not the loan.
Yes.
Yeah. And you guys both in the last couple of minutes mentioned platforms as well. And we see more and more decline in traditional marketing spend and increasing always in digital spend. And part of that is reaching those younger audiences. And part of that is because our life is on our phones and screens and all of that. So that's the where we speak to that. So Erin, as we're having conversations with our bank clients that understand that, and they're moving away from whatever, traditional radio or print or those types of things, or moving or decreasing it, while we always encourage maintaining community presence, sponsoring schools and all of those things, that's part of your differentiation from the bigs. But it's also, okay, we want to move to digital. And it's like, okay, well, how is the messaging evolving? Or is it, So for sticking your logo out there, and it's since 1913, and I keep going to that, but that's not going to create conversions in digital advertising. It's not, but that all the things that you've talked about the relatability and the problem solving and, all of those, the differentiation, all of those things are what, need to modernize along with the platform utilization, right?
Yeah. At core, it really comes back to how are we being really explicitly clear in the mind of our prospect what problem we solve for them. Because if you lead with, we're a community bank, excellent, you're a bank. That gives me really no helpful information to differentiate you between the person down the street. It really comes down to, what is the problem you own? What is the problem that you are known for solving? And if you can own a problem in the marketplace, then you can be known and you can really grow, that way. And the thing is like, get known for that problem. But once people are in the door, cross-sell and upsell the heck out of all the other of your services. Like, that is much easier problem to solve once people are in the door. But it's getting them in the door to begin with. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about your brand message is, how are we getting people in your front door? Once they're there, we can sell all the other things.
And be all about relationship and all the things that community banks do well. Yes.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Man, awesome. Erin, Dan and I, with our agencies, we not only do we see this as a challenge for community financial institutions, but it's one of those things that as we're seeking to serve well, we wish this so much for just kind of the mindset shift, if you will, into the crucial importance of this messaging. And then let's go do the digital ad campaigns. Then let's go do the things and, updating your website and on and on and on, right? But I think this is, and I hope what our listeners have taken away from this as a key takeaway is, this is so foundational, not just changing platforms and even marketing strategies, And gosh, you've alluded to the internal benefits, and Dan, we've seen the backside, right, Dan, of a lot of this, and it's like, oh wow, this informed our messaging on social and our updates on our website and all of that, and for like a year, 2 years, it gave us content for,
and not just informing, but making all that stuff easier.
Yes.
Right. Instead of sitting there and spinning on like, well, what do we do on social this month? Or what do we do on social this week? It's like, go back to the brand story and read through it yourself. And you'll probably come up with 10 ideas of, we can talk about this. And, so I think we talked about the unifying, aspect of this, but it's not just unifying. It's like through that unification, things become easier. A lot of other things kind of click into place.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
You're absolutely right. I don't do marketing implementation work anymore with clients. I did for a while. Now I just do, helping folks develop clear brand messages and do like coaching, consulting kind of work. But when I was doing implementation all of the time, going through and developing a brand message was a non-negotiable first step in working with a client, because otherwise all of those content-based things, websites and social and ads and all the things, like, you're shooting in the dark to try to figure out what you're saying, and you're making new decisions about what you're saying every time, which is burning way too much mental energy instead of getting aligned around the message together. And then everything else flows out of that far more easily, as you were saying, Dan. So, yeah.
So right. Listen, I love how this has progressed, this conversation, Erin. I know that we know our typical listeners probably nodding and going, yeah, we got to do this and all of that. So when we close out the episode here in a minute, we'll definitely include your contact information and all of that, Erin, and folks can obviously connect with Dan and I through the Bank Marketing Show website and all of that. But this has been just so informative and insightful. It really has. But we can't let you get out of here without the lightning round if you got okay. For that. Yeah.
Okay.
Gives our folks some really cool insight into you and your work and life as well. So
yeah. Let me have it.
There you go. All right. Well, we always like to start with this. Can you share a personal best and a business best?
Yeah. I always have a hard time coming up with like best. So I'm going to reframe it as like things that I'm learning, like the things that I'm learning both personally and in business. And so personally, really in the last year, I am learning to rest in new ways. I love my work and I love to work, but learning and growing in knowing how to rest has been a good personal learning for me in the last year, and I'm grateful for it. And then in business, I've made some really intentional just pivot decisions in the work that I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And I think the best in there is that they have been decisive decisions to just commit and move forward in some ways. And so that has been both a learning and a real gift there. I've had some seasons of transition in the last year in my work in some really good ways, and I'm thankful for it out of some intentional decisions. So
very cool. Congratulations in that. Yeah. Utilizing your own brand messaging and direction for that. So I like it. Yeah. Walking the walk. Yeah. Well, Erin, what about a favorite book or resource?
Yeah, so I'm an avid reader. I could give you a long list. I always have several books going at once. But given the conversation we've had today, the book that I would recommend to our listeners is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it really walks through this messaging framework in a very accessible way. And it's an easy read. You can grab it on Audible. You could, listen to it on Audible or read the physical book if that's more your speed. But to really unpack and uncover what the framework, like getting into the weeds of what the framework looks like, highly recommend. It's one of those that I revisit. Even though I do this work all the time, it's one of those books that I pick up over and over again. So it's a good one.
Yeah, that's foundational. Yeah, we'll definitely link to that in the show notes from the episode today, too. So, cool. Erin, what's the most impactful piece of advice? And when I ask that, what kind of comes to mind for you that you've received?
Yeah. I don't know if this is advice or so much a challenge that I have worked with a business coach, and he says, only mediocre people are always at their best. And this idea that only mediocre people are always, doing fantastic and always are delivering the best. I think there is something to be said for challenging ourselves, taking on new challenges that put us in a place of discomfort, so we can be a beginner at something and try something new, and it's what grows us. And so that's just been both an encouragement and a challenge for me that I have really embraced in the last handful of years, and appreciate, on the path to learn. I'm a learner, and so learning new things and so forth. And so even as our listeners are listening to this and hearing this whole piece about should you develop a brand message for your organization, I think if you feel like you're already at your best and you don't have anything to gain or learn there, I'm going to push back on you and say, only mediocre people are always at their best. To take that for however you need to take it. So, yeah.
That is a great, I guess, makes you think really hard receiving that directive or challenge. That's right. Yeah. Well, so flipping that in something you always tell your team, your clients, is that something additional, or does it go along with that?
Yeah, it goes along with that. I would say the additional piece, when I'm working like in the day-to-day, working with my clients, I'm always asking them the question, is this customer focused? Are we making it about the customer? Are we making it about you as a company? How can we make it more about the customer so that we can build trust? Because at the end of the day, people do business with people that they trust. And so being customer focused, it builds trust. And so I'm always like holding up a mirror and asking that question. is this about the customer? Is this about the customer or is it about you? And giving them that pushback to always strive for excellence and strive for being customer focused truly in everything that you do as an organization. Great
point. Yeah, love that. Well, Erin, how can our listeners reach out to or get in touch with you and maybe learn more?
Yeah, so on social, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and you can just look up my name, Erin Fults, and Fults is with an S at the end. Or my email is erin@theacornteam.com if you want to reach out that way. But if you hear this and you're a financial institution that is interested in doing brand message development work, like we talked about today, reach out to Chris or Dan, because I work with Chris and Dan regularly on this work.
That's right.
They should be your first point of contact, and they'll bring me in on a project like that if that's the right fit for you. So
there you go. Well, and as I mentioned, we'll put all of the above in the show notes for folks too. If you're driving down the road and can't jot that down, worry not. You'll be able to come to the website and when this new episode comes out, see Erin up top and connect to us through that way. And we certainly invite folks to do that. Come to bankmarketingshow.com and you can grab all of that information and make those connections. So yeah, run, don't walk. If you haven't done this, yes, got to do it. So, well, Erin, this has been phenomenal. Can't thank you enough. We knew this would be some extremely informative, helpful, hopefully motivating bits of information that's really sensible and foundational. So, Dan and I can't thank you enough for coming on and joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris and Dan both. Really enjoy the conversation. And this work is important. It's fun because we get to give the good guys the microphone and help them serve more people. And that's really what drives my interest and desire to do this work. So
love that.
Yeah, thank you, Erin.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.